It is 3 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get started here. My name is Ben Shelton. I work for the North Carolina Center for Geographic Information and Analysis. Today, I will be both your moderator and speaker today, so wearing two hats. So if you're having any audio issues or the slides aren't updating or anything at all, please let me know through the chat so I will know. Otherwise, I'm in a room speaking to myself. But I will go ahead and jump right in. Like I said, my name is Ben Shelton. I'm the program manager for the North Carolina 911 Board Statewide Orthoimagery Program. Been with CGI for about 7 years, doing primarily the imagery program amongst other things. But I'm here to speak a little bit about the color infrared band of imagery and the statewide ortho program. Like you may have heard through the grapevine, starting in 2020, we began collecting, acquiring, and processing the fourth band or color infrared, as well as the typical RGB stuff that we've done in the past. So just wanted to kind of go over program overview and get into a little bit about what color infrared is and what it can be used for. Here's a quick overview. You may have seen this slide during the plenary session with Pokey Harris. This is the current 4-year cycle that we're in right now for the 911 board program. We completed 2020 this past December. We delivered that to the PSAPs and the counties in the blue area there along the coast. Now currently we're in the 2021 area, the green, and we're putting together a proposal currently to get the 2022 funding in place so that we can start that next year. So as you can see, it's kind of a juggling match for this program to keep it going. There's always one closing out, one current, and one upcoming that we have to keep track of. 2021, like I said, is our current project. It is the 26 counties centered around the Raleigh-Durham urban area there, shown in the little dots. That's where we're doing a true ortho imagery product. It's kind of where you do some extra processing and 3D modeling to get the buildings to be completely vertical. Anything over 40 feet is what our specification is that needs to be the true ortho imagery in those two areas. So that'll allow all those buildings to be straight up and down, won't be blocking any sidewalks and things like that. The other major thing for this project area is the inclusion of Fort Bragg and Camp McCall. Those two installations have very restricted airspace, so it takes a lot of coordination to get our acquisition contractors into that airspace. And then there's also Seymour Johnson. Got a question already about the 911 board. Yes, it is completely funded by the 911 board. Back in 2010, they funded the first statewide orthoimagery project where we did the whole state all in once, and now we do a 4-year cycle that's based on the business plan for orthoimagery that was put together by the Geographic Information Coordinating Council in the state. So that's where the funding comes from every year, and that's where the proposals go each year to get that funding put in place. But so we have 4 contractors who are currently underway flying. You can see here we have about 25% of the flight lines have been completed as of today. I think they were trying to fly yesterday, but I'm not sure how much they got acquired. So there might be a little bit more based on what the ground conditions were when they flew it. You know, it has been quite wet. So, you know, we have a lot of specifications for flooding, standing water and things like that. So that these, the area in blue there, the dark blue, it was the first day of flight. It was January 29th. And we're happy to say that Fort Bragg restricted airspace has been collected already. So we've kind of put that behind us. We're pretty excited about that. That's always kind of a major hurdle for this project to get collected, was getting that airspace over the military installation, because they have a lot of training. And in the last few years, they've had GPS interference training, which really affects our ability to collect imagery. So we're really excited to get that flown. And you know, they've had 4 days of good flying over, you know, the past about 2-3 weeks almost. So it's a pretty difficult acquisition season with all the specifications we put together. But we typically only have about 10 to 12 days of good flying weather in over 2 months. So we still have quite a bit of time left in this project. So I think we still have plenty of time to collect the remaining imagery before the leaf out conditions come across. So here's our project timeline. Like I mentioned, we're about in the middle, in the imagery acquisition season. It goes through March, probably maybe into April this year, depending on what we're seeing. At least it's been cold, so the leaves will stay off. Last year was really difficult in 2020 because we had the quote unquote earliest spring on record based on some measures, and that was a little stressful to get that all acquired before those leaves came out, because it never really got cold last year, except for a little quick snowstorm we had in the end of February. But as long as the snow's off the ground, the rivers are within their banks, and the clouds are out of the sky, we're able to collect. And we have hopefully some good days ahead of us here this year. After we collect all that imagery, we'll go into imagery production leading up until June. That's where the contractors go back. We have several compliance documentation things that they have to put together that ensures that we have proper overlap and a lot of the other specifications are met. And then we get to the quality control. So many of you may have been a part of our projects in the past during this quality control phase. That phase will entail us having an online quality control platform that we call Voice, where the end users are able to come on. The vendors load all of their imagery into this online platform, and we can all review it all in the same place. So you can see the issues that are being found, and we can correct all of those by getting the contractors to submit fixed tiles. Then we confirm everything's fixed before we get into delivery, which hopefully this year we're aiming for the mid-November time period. Last year in 2020, we delivered in the first week of December, and we've done that in a few projects in the past, and we're trying to expedite that process a little bit to November. As I mentioned, the 2020 imagery project was completed the first week of December. This is a glimpse of the image services that we put out on NC1 Map. Some of you may already be using that imagery along the coast. Using that URL right there, you can bring it into your software packages. And for the very first time in the program history, we were able to process and distribute the 4th band of imagery. It's color infrared. So what color infrared is back in World War II, our military was looking to identify camouflage tanks in dense vegetation, and they developed the ability to have color infrared imagery that could see those tanks even if they're camouflaged in dense vegetation, because they reflect that spectrum of light differently than the vegetation surrounding them. Nowadays, I'm sure the camouflages and the stealth technology has gotten to the point where that isn't the case anymore. But back then, that's what they used during World War II. So we are able to use that and build on that product to now come up with this imagery product for the 4th band. And what you're seeing here is a false color view of that 4th band from our imagery service. And all of that is available on NC1 Map. So NC1 Map has a few different places where you can download and use imagery. You can use those imagery services like I showed previously, but you can also download individual tiles. There on the left, you can see it's a little quick map interface where you click any of the, around 60,000 tiles in the state, and you can download those SID tiles straight through that interface, going back to even past projects. So you can see in one tile there, it'll have the 2020 imagery, 2016, 2012, and 2010 that you can download all in the same interface. These files for 2020 specifically are single tile 20:1 compression, and it includes all 4 bands, and it's a generation 4 Mr. SID. So it's a new product that it's not new to new to the industry, but it's new to us. So that 4th band allows us to do that color infrared, and we deliver that for the 2020 project area. We also, if you're looking to download multiple tiles, you can actually bring in the image service into ArcGIS or ArcGIS Pro or ArcMap, and using the select tool, you can draw a box around the tiles you want, and it'll select the imagery in the image service. And then right-clicking that imagery service in your table of contents, you can quickly download the rasters straight through the image service. And that capability is just something that we've turned on for NC1 Map, and allows people to download as many tiles as they want straight through the service. But I just note that it also will select overview tiles, so you want to make sure you deselect those. Either in the download tool, there's an option to deselect them, or you can find some other menus that'll have that option. We also develop Mr. SID mosaics, which take all of those tiled products and we compress them into one single file per county. For 2020, we again are doing the Generation 4 product, which allows us to clip it to the county boundary. And it doesn't add all those extra pixels, the white black pixels around the edges of that file, like the Generation 3 SID product used to do. And so that's why we used to square off all of our imagery products on NC1 Map, but now we just clip it to the county boundary and you can download those straight through a map interface, or you can do it through a drop-down box as shown there in the slide. Now we're trying to mix it up, and we're getting some feedback now. We've gotten that Generation 4 SID out there and the 4th band product, and just some other general things, since NC1 Map is now kind of migrating into an Amazon web service workspace kind of thing. So all of our NC1 Map products and everything are going to be going into the cloud. We're migrating it currently. So when that happens, we're trying to update some of the products that we're distributing. So first off, based on the feedback from some of our surveying community, the CAD users, a lot of these MicroStation AutoCAD products cannot accept the 4th generation Mr. SID, even though it's been out for a decade, and we should contact those vendors. So since that's the case, and we want to make it as compatible as possible for all software platforms, we're working to try to include a 3-band Generation 3 SID tile alongside that 4th band Generation 4. So we're just kind of trying to give you as many options as possible. So we're working on getting those 3-band Generation 3 tiles added for that 2020 project area. And so look out for those. Also, if you follow that process that we described before about downloading the imagery through the image service, in ArcMap or ArcGIS Pro, well, when we migrate to Amazon, we're going to be using a different base layer for the source files. It's called a meta raster format. It's a format that was developed by NASA JPL. It's kind of a cloud optimized, as they say, product, so that it's supposed to run a little faster in the cloud. So we're using those as our base tiles instead of SID tiles. So if you download our imagery from the image service, you'll get MRF files. Now, you can still use those files just like any other imagery product. It's just like in any other raster. You can add those to mosaic data sets and use them just like a SID file. So just be aware, if you do download in the next couple months, we're going to be making that switch. We'll probably put out a blast on the NCGIS listserv, so look out for that. But you'll see those MRF files, and they work just the same as SID files. And also for our countywide mosaics that we're distributing right now, we're also working on getting all of the historic mosaics uploaded. So now that we're going to a cloud environment, storage is cheap, unlike the state servers. So we're trying to upload as many of those historic mosaic files for all the counties as possible. So for this example in the image here, we're hoping that if you click on Pender, it'll list not just the 2020 imagery, but it'll have 2016, 2012, and all the other past mosaics. And we're going to try to do that in the dropdown as well. I see there's some other questions. Sorry, I don't want to get off track, but I will come back and answer everybody's questions. Sorry. But I have too many screens up trying to do both at one time. So I'll get to the questions after. All right, so for color infrared, we're also trying to put some educational materials out on NC1 Map, and you can access those in this view here. So on NC1 Map, there's an imagery specific page that has a lot of information about project status. It has a link to our ortho program site, has a lot of useful information, and all of that stuff, including a map of the contractors and things from past projects and this current project, all can be on our ortho. It's a story map, an Esri story map that we put out that has all of the kind of kitchen sink approach to every project. Everything we have, we're putting out there. But also new to the imagery pages on NC1 Map is some links to some informational materials about color infrared, what it is, what you can do with it, things like that. We're also working to put the updated document that it's the working group for orthoimagery and elevation put together. We've kind of updated it just slightly to include some more business cases. So we're getting that new document from that working group put out there as well. So that has a lot of like kind of the history and background, color infrared, business cases, uses, things like that. So using the fourth band, if you're just trying to visualize, so the fourth band does provide some useful visualization if you're looking to look at man-made objects compared to dense vegetation around it, like I said, with those tanks. And to do so in ArcMap, it's just a matter of clicking on the layer properties and table of contents. That could be through the image service, through the tiled products, the mosaic, any of those 4-band products. You can go in, click the layer properties, and it's kind of a manual process in ArcMap to go in and you have to reorder the bands yourself. So as I showed here in the example, you just kind of take the 4th band, put it to the red channel, and then you reorder the bands. So it's 4, 1, 2. So you're taking the 4th band first, and then the 1st band, the 2nd band, and the 3rd band is dropped. And that gets you that false color infrared look at everything. So ArcMap makes you kind of work for it a little bit. But ArcGIS Pro, thankfully, has this nice handy little drop down. So you click on the layer over in the table of contents, you go up to the band combination drop down, and you can quickly just select the color infrared option, and it does that kind of reordering of the bands for you. So it makes it really easy. You can turn it on, see the color infrared, and use it for analysis, or just use it for visualization if that's what you're trying to do. I'd just like to include this slide. Sometimes Esri software will automatically apply stretches and gamma stretches to the imagery. So we put a lot of effort. We have multiple contractors that fly our projects, and we try to take all those vendors and do a lot of radiometry kind of compliance and things. We have a lot of steps where they submit samples, we adjust them, and goes back and forth. So we do all this work and to make our radiometry the way we want it to be. So quickly, I would just like to mention that you'd like to select that stretch type, turn it to none, and then where it says gamma, this little gamma symbol here, make sure it's at 1, and that'll get you the original imagery radiometry. Now, if you're not happy with the imagery, if you want it to be bluer, if you want it to be greener or whatnot, you can make adjustments in ArcGIS Pro pretty easily. It's kind of nice how much adjustment you can make to the raster products. Even in the symbology drop down there on the left, it will allow you to quickly apply like a black, like a gray gradient scale to the imagery. It makes it nice and clean, easy way to make it black and white imagery, which, when I'm making maps and things and you put data on top of imagery, sometimes it gets cluttered. It's kind of nice to have the imagery there, but turn it black and white so your data kind of pops off the imagery a little better. So there's a lot of good uses for that. It's just fun to play around sometimes. All right, so the 4th band, what can you do with it? What's the typical uses? Now, I just like to remind everybody, this is a color infrared product for leaf off. So a lot of color infrared is for crop health and things like that. NAEP program, you can see a lot of different uses for that. But our products are leaf off, so it's a little different. You might not get as much use when it comes to like crop health because there are no crops unless there's winter crops. The main use for color infrared imagery when it's leaf off is impervious surface extraction. So, Esri has a lot of nice ways to take some deep learning techniques, image classification. You do need an image analyst or spatial analyst extension on these, but you can run some quick training models. You can do supervised or unsupervised classification pretty easily. And the example shown there, I just quickly did that in about an hour in a group of tiles to pull out the impervious surface in those areas. Now, I will note that with any of these kind of automated processes, you can really only automate about 80% of the process, and you still have to do that 15–20% of manual editing and cleanup. As you can see in the example, there's a lot of dirty edges where you kind of want to clean it up, make it nice and easy. Or you need to take out the cars and things like that off the parking lot. So there's just some things out there that you still can't automate fully. A good example I'd like to give a shout out to Nate Harold, who I stole this from. This is an example of his the NOAA beta project or pilot project along the coast that they were doing, where they're kind of taking multiple different sources of imagery and with color infrared and things like that, and trying to process out a high resolution land cover product. So this is an example of a comparison between 30-meter land cover on the left and the 10-meter that they're trying to develop in the pilot project on the coast. There's a lot of vegetation analysis. So this is color infrared. It's one piece of the puzzle, but you can also build on that, do some further raster calculations. The one shown here is the normalized difference vegetation index. And what that does is it kind of really highlights vegetation, really healthy vegetation versus not healthy vegetation, depending on the darkness of the green there. And you'll see the red really just doesn't reflect the color infrared at all the same. So that's why you get that red tone, but it really highlights the vegetation compared to man-made features as well. Here's an example that I found doing some Esri training on image classification and deep learning. They're able to take products like this and do some deep learning models that extract specific trees, tree species out of the imagery. So this is an example. I think it was palm trees they were trying to take and extract out using deep learning models. And then it's a quick example of how color infrared can really highlight soil moisture and where it's oversaturated. This really kind of played out firsthand in our 2020 project. I believe it was the Neuse River had some flooding during some of our flights. And quickly after flying the aircraft, the contractors really have to make a quick determination whether it needs reflights. They have to kind of go through and analyze all the imagery and see if it meets specifications. Well, using the color infrared and turning it on, one of our vendors was able to see around the Neuse River where it might not be easily noticeable if you're scanning through the imagery, but with color infrared on, it was really easily discernible that there was a dark moisture level that just extended out further than the floodplain. So he knew that they needed to go back and refly that imagery. And just again, with the NDVI, look at things that really highlights that moisture level and the drowned out spots and things like that in the field. So there's a lot of different uses for the fourth band, but I wanted to leave some time for some of the questions that I saw coming through. And I saw David's been answering some of them, so that's pretty good. Thanks, David. All right. As I said, yes, it was funded completely by the 911 board. Ben Capel, sorry if I mispronounced that. How is the division of counties vendors determined? So honestly, we go project by project and we do a qualifications-based selection process where we look at the qualifications, we put out a request for qualifications, we get as many vendor proposals as we can. Before we select any vendors, the project team kind of sits down and thinks, how many vendors does it take to do this project area while minimizing risk and not really kind of shoehorning a certain number of vendors into the project area? It's how many do we feel it is necessary to really acquire the imagery is one of the main determining factors. We try to get as many sensors in there as we can. So, depending on the square miles per vendor, and there's a lot of different factors that we take in. And then we also look at natural breaks and things like that. In 2020, we had 2 vendors and we assigned them study areas down in the south, but they were using the same sensor. So they'd be flying the same flying height. So if you have flight lines that are close together, because they have to overlap some, and if they're flying at the same height with the same sensor, it's kind of a safety issue. So that's why you saw in 2020 possibly that we actually broke it off of the county boundary, not at the county boundary, just to allow for safety to be our primary concern there. So, I mean, it just is a lot of different factors that we take into account to break up the contract. Resolution, yes, it's 6-inch. We collect 6-inch across the board. I know some state products do like 1 foot some places and 6-inch in others, but we just we want a consistent product. You never know where for 911 response, if a cell phone is going to be coming in from a nature reserve or something, somebody's stranded, a hiker's missing. I think there were some instances in Hope County back in like 2012, 2013, where there was some stranded hikers out in the wilderness, and they used the imagery to kind of, locate where those people were and get the response teams out to them. So even if it's not an urban area, we want it to be 6-inch to give them the tools to respond anywhere. All right, Will Corbett. Ben, will the 3-band older generation be available within raster that we received in December, or that we receive in December? On the hard drives going to 911, this past year we did not, or we did include the 3-band, but it wasn't generation 3, I believe. I think because we didn't get the feedback from the CAD community, from the AutoCAD community until after delivery. So I think maybe on this future delivery, we will create the generation 3-band. Because honestly, the generation 3 product of Mr. Sid won't even accept a 4th band. So it makes sense to just go ahead and deliver the generation 3-band, at least for the tiled products. Nate Harold, do you offer access to uncompressed versions of the imagery? Yes, we do. We have the fully uncompressed Tiff imagery. We don't offer it through download just because of size requirements, but if there is a request, we can send out hard drives to whoever needs it. We can work that out. If you have it, just feel free to contact me. Doug Newcomb, how does MRF compare to COG? I'm not sure I know what COG is. I'll have to get back to you, Doug, on that one. Honestly, I was unaware of MRF until we started migrating to the cloud and it came up. So I'll have to look into COG. Sorry about that. All right, David, answered Nate's question. Christian Forsland asked, any plans to offer Ortho latest cache service on state plane instead of WGS 84? We don't have any plans, but if you have a need for state plane instead of WGS 84, we can try to work something out. The cached service is quite a monster to handle. I know Brett Spivey always curses my name when he has to do it, but we can look into doing something like that. If you have a need, just feel free to contact me. We can look into it. What is the preferred method for QGIS? I don't have a lot of hands-on experience with QGIS, honestly, Doug. I know that it should handle most things because it has GDAL in the back end, so it should be able to handle any of these kind of formats. All right, David's out there. Man, David's on top of things. What resolution? 6-inch. So Connie asked, what kind of DTM data was used for ortho production? So we have been using the LiDAR programs, DEMs. The contractors reach out and get the latest LiDAR that's available, and typically that has been the statewide LiDAR program. And then they go ahead and they actually downsample the DEMs. I think mainly they use 10-foot DEMs, because if you have too high of a resolution in your DEM, it'll actually pull and stretch the imagery in ways you don't want. So you kind of want a smoothed out DEM and not like a really hyper specific one. So I know they've done 10-foot, maybe in the mountains, they might go a little lower than that. Let's see, Zolt, hey Zolt. In the 1998 DOQQ CR still handy, and what tips do you have on using it for change detection with the new data set? Yeah, the change detection routines are kind of interesting, and I'm still kind of in the process of early stages of looking into that. So I'm not too familiar with what the 1998 CIR is. Sorry, Zolt, I'll have to follow up with you on that one. Patrick Williams, okay, just took remote sensing. All right, thanks for the feedback. And Ben Capel, I think last question here. Does the division of project task follow the same flight and data acquisition vendor subcontract? Data processing, I'm not sure I follow the question. Data processing. So the project tasks follows our, we have about 7 primary tasks that we have for each contractor. It goes with flight planning, data compliance, the flight compliance. Then we have control surveys. I mean, we try to analyze everything. DOT does a lot of our technical analysis on like overlap and nadir GSD and things like that. So they do a lot of that process, and it is the same for every contract, for every project area. So I think I'm about out of time. So I appreciate everybody's questions. It's good questions. I'll try to follow up with the ones that I've jotted down, and hope everybody enjoys the rest of their conference. But thank you for attending the session. And last question about the LiDAR program. Not currently. We don't have funding for LiDAR. 911 doesn't have the use for the LiDAR, but I know they're trying to look at refreshing the LiDAR program. So that's the last question. All right. Everybody enjoy your day, and thanks for attending. Appreciate it.